The subject covered in this video is one that has been covered at length by several other prominent personalities here on YouTube. However, I find it necessary to add my voice to the collective, though late to the game it may be, for two reasons. Number one, I offer a somewhat different perspective given that I have a different persuasion both ideologically and theologically than most of the other respondents. And two, when crazy threatens to become mainstream, all should stand against it.
Would you date someone who's trans?
No.
Would you date someone who's black?
No.
Would you date someone who's fat?
No.
Would you date someone who's disabled?
No.
Now, honestly, I don't know what your answer is to those questions, but I've met a surprising number of people who would say no to all or at least some of them.
Why would this be surprising? The whole idea behind dating is that at some point in the future there will be sexual encounters between the persons involved. And throughout human history, the vast majority have taken an interest in ensuring that the human race survives, and there's only one way for that to happen, and that's procreation. One of the groups in question, which you have listed, makes that impossible, and the other three present varying levels of difficulty in making the next generation viable and sustainable.
Their argument is that it's just a preference and that you can't control who you're attracted to.
Any person who has ever gone through puberty and is not in a state of complete denial has to admit that there are automated impulses which are involuntary that are very much connected with initial attraction, which is under consideration here. Now, there's a difference between initial attraction and continued attraction, or more plainly, acting upon an impulse, so to speak, and that is volitionary. But that is not what I think Riley is talking about here. I think what he is talking about here is the notion that a person can control involuntary impulses, which is patently ridiculous. In fact, almost as ridiculous as he looks.
I think most of the time that this is brought up, it's in regards to race. I'll link to a couple really good videos in the description about racial dating preferences.
Yeah, I looked into these so-called really good links that he's suggested. One of them is to a video by Cat Black, who is one of the few people on YouTube that both looks and sounds crazier than this cross-dressing freak. The second link is to MTV News. I think all of you already know how I feel about them. And then the other two links are to everydayfeminism.com, a perfect storm of cultural Marxist lunacy. No thank you.
But in this video, I want to talk about our other biases. Let's start with trans people. Would you date a trans person, honestly? Think about it for a second.
Believe it or not, I actually thought about this for a second, and it took all the effort I could muster to stifle my gag reflex. Sorry to break this to you, Riley, but the whole idea of going out on a date with a tranny is absolutely nauseating to me, nay, detestable.
Okay, got your answer? Well, if you said no, I'm sorry, but that's pretty discriminatory.
Sure, it's discriminatory. You know what else is discriminatory? Any form of monogamy, because there's 6 billion other people out there at least that are not getting in on that. So what?
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you're a horrible person who hates trans people.
Loving the passive-aggressive routine here.
There was probably a time in my life when I said I wouldn't date a trans person.
Which suggests that schizophrenia isn't the only mental disease that can manifest later in life than childhood.
But since then, I've thought critically about it.
I don't really know that you understand what critical thinking actually is, and to tell you the truth, given your presentation thus far, I question whether you even know the meaning of the word meaning.
And changed my mind. I could sit here and show you photos of conventionally attractive trans people. There are definitely trans people who you would never know are trans unless they told you, because they pass for cis. And that might convince some of you. But I think arguing that you would only like a trans person if you didn't know they were trans is a poor argument.
If I heard somebody make an argument like that, I would question their sanity, because at some point you would have to deal with the fact that the person is trans, because at some point the dating would lead to something else.
I think you could be attracted to any trans person, whether they pass or not. I think the main concern that people have in regards to dating a trans person is that they won't have the genitals that they expect.
Yeah, if a person is looking to have children someday, that might be an issue.
Because we associate penises with men and vaginas with women, some people think they could never date a trans man with a vagina or a trans woman with a penis. But I think that people are more than their genitals.
All right, let's return from La La Land for just a second here. The issue isn't whether or not people are only their genitals or if there is more to them or not. The issue is dating. Now, if you're just looking for a friend, somebody to hang out with, then obviously the genital issue doesn't come into consideration. But if you're looking for a spouse and to have a family, it's a pretty important thing.
I think that you could feel attraction to someone without knowing what's between their legs. And if you were to say that you're only attracted to people with vaginas or people with penises, it really feels like you're reducing people just to their genitals. You're kind of objectifying them, but you're thinking of them more as genitals than objects. So I guess you're kind of genitalifying them?
Oh, the SJW crossdresser tried to make a joke. Listen to the crickets.
Anyway, my point is, we have implicit biases that we were raised with or that we developed over time, and they can be hard to get rid of.
No, what we're dealing with here is human nature. The P goes in the V, and 9 months later you get the B. What part of that is complicated?
And I think this can be especially prominent within the queer community. Gay men often pride themselves on being disgusted by vaginas, and the same goes for lesbian women with penises. It's difficult because some queer people have built their sexual identities on these repulsions, but I don't think they're innate at all. If you met someone who was extremely attractive, had a great personality, but didn't have the genitals that you wanted, you might be surprised to find that it isn't a deal breaker.
Okay, taking a moment to get over the bewilderment of listening to a sodomite criticize other sodomites for being a little more consistent than he is, and just getting to the final point made here. Riley, you seem to have a little bit of difficulty distinguishing dating from having a friend. I have no problem whatsoever hanging out at the bar with my good friend Bob. The minute Bob grabs my ass, there's a good chance he might get a knife stuck in his throat. Clear enough for you?
As someone who is trans and gay, sometimes people ask me with a very accusatory tone if I would date a girl with a penis. Because there's this stereotype that trans lesbians are just predatory cis men creeping on cis women. But the thing is, I absolutely could be attracted to a woman with a penis. I could be attracted to any woman, cis or trans. If I find you attractive, I don't care what you have down there. But we know that sexual orientations are more innate than learned. They're more nature and less nurture.
Oh, my poor brain is turning into the Hindenburg. Oh, the humanity. First, sexual orientations are not innate, but now they are. Riley is a transsexual lesbian who might actually like dick. What kind of sense does this make? 'Cause I haven't a clue.
Gay conversion therapy has been proven not to work.
Really, you care to share the proof that it doesn't work? Because I've actually seen the opposite occur multiple times within my own church. The thing about conversion therapy, and there's a lot of misconceptions about it, is that it begins with the person seeking to be converted. It's an entirely voluntary process in which the sodomite wishes to abandon that lifestyle. As such, I obviously disagree with you on the notion that sexual orientations are innate. There is only one innate sexual orientation. Everything else is corruption. If you doubt me on this, look at the statistics for all of the alternative lifestyle types out there. Psychological disorder rates, suicide rates, death by disease rates, drug use rates are all sky high. And if you try to pull that bullying bullshit card on me, I'll point you to the Netherlands, because sodomites in Dutchland have the same psychological profile that they do over here. And according to all of these enlightened progressives, the Netherlands is the bastion of tolerance by which all of us are to follow.
But you can unlearn your own prejudices. It just takes time and conscious effort. And the way that we talk about potentially dating trans people has a lot in common with the way we discuss other preferences. Saying that you're not attracted to fat people isn't innate. It's informed by a society that tells you that being thin is ideal.
Society does not dictate that being a healthy weight is ideal. Human biology does this. I don't think I need to even get into the particulars about being fat or obese because they kind of speak for themselves. Higher heart attack rates, lower life expectancies, and decreased proficiency in the bedroom, which is what the basic thrust of this video is supposed to be, right? Your average person is not attracted to somebody who is a fat bag of flesh because they don't like the idea of spending more than 20 years of their elder years as a widower.
Everything in the media you consume is bombarding you with messages that skinny is beautiful and fat is ugly. And even the nicest of people absorb these messages to some degree. But again,
people tend to absorb these messages because they conform to what they already know. Hence the point that there is something innate that is in consideration here.
But again, if you find someone attractive and really enjoy spending time with them, there's no reason why their weight should be a factor. Especially since we know that the relationship between weight and health is extremely complex, and you really can't make any moral judgments on a person based on their weight. And lastly, let's talk about disabled people. Disabilities come in a very wide range, from being deaf to being in a wheelchair to only having one arm, and I think it's pretty ridiculous to say that you couldn't be attracted to any person who has any of those disabilities.
Okay, putting aside for a second here the fact that on one hand you're accusing us of only obsessing over people's genitals and now you're getting mad at us for focusing on other parts of the human anatomy, you do realize that physical attraction pertains to the physical, and it is actually a very natural and often unavoidable thing to be turned off physically to someone with abnormalities in appearance or physical disabilities that are particularly debilitating, such as a missing limb or the inability to walk. Leave us not forget the fact that most people that are into screwing people that are either quadriplegic or paraplegic are just one step removed from necrophilia.
Disabilities can happen to anyone. Someone you're extremely attracted to today could become disabled tomorrow, and that shouldn't make your attraction to them disappear. Though if it does, it might not be because of them, but rather because you have some preconceived ideas about disabled people that are just inaccurate and harmful.
Yeah, Riley's confusing concepts again here, but I guess that's to be expected for somebody who thinks there's such a thing as a transsexual lesbian who also may like dick. Being attracted to someone physically and being a decent and compassionate human being are not the same thing. They are often interrelated, and they are traits that will often occur in the same person. But a person who does not find their spouse physically attractive anymore because they have lost the capability to function in a sexual capacity is not an act of cruelty. It's simply a natural response to a situation. Just like not being sexually attracted to a person who is deceased is not unnatural. Obviously, that's not the same thing, but we're getting into similar territory here. A person who would abandon and refuse to care for their spouse when they've come to a state where they are no longer able to perform in the bedroom is terrible. I will say that up front. But there is grounds for a lawful divorce if a spouse is not capable of performing the duties of wife or husband in the bedroom and in other capacities. I would say that an ex-spouse under this circumstance would still be duty-bound to care for their ex-spouse if they're in dire straits, but they are not obligated to exclude themselves from the possibility of fathering or mothering more children because of this.
Unsurprisingly, this is another case of the media telling you that a certain group isn't attractive. Disabled people are rarely romantic leads. Their stories in movies and TV shows are often tragic, but that doesn't reflect the reality that disabled people can be happy and have dating lives and be attractive.
The reason why disabled people are often depicted in tragic situations in the media is because being disabled is not a good thing. This doesn't necessarily mean that they are not capable of leading fruitful and productive lives and enjoying their lives, but having a disability is not a good thing, and I think it is very bizarre for a person to fetishize it.
Now, if you're not attracted to someone, you're not attracted to them. I'm not going to tell you that you have to be attracted to this fat person or that trans person or that disabled person. But the more you work at unlearning your own prejudices, the more you'll be able to see people from these groups as people rather than tired stereotypes. Unlearning our own biases doesn't happen overnight, and I don't have a step-by-step instruction guide for you. But I think if you can accept that these prejudices exist in all of us, even you can identify them when they come up and work to change how you think about them. It will most likely be a long, slow process, but I think it's worth it. Because
why don't we apply the same logic that you're using here to conversion therapy? I mean, if a person works hard enough at it, they can change their mentality on the way they see people of the same sex and the opposite sex, and they might even cure themselves of their sad state of sterility and be able to have a family. Sounds good to me.
Because these dating preferences are ultimately harmful to people who don't fit into your box of what a conventionally attractive person looks like. It makes people feel isolated, alone, and unwanted to hear that they're universally unattractive to people.
Riley, I don't know what alternative reality you're living in right now, but queer people in general have no problem getting sex. If they did, they might not be dying off of AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases at such an alarming rate. And for you to think that it's a crime that I don't share in their terminal illness is disturbing.
I don't think there's anyone out there who somebody doesn't find attractive. We're sold this image of the conventionally attractive person, but in reality, all kinds of people around the world are constantly dating, having sex, finding people attractive, getting married. It's not only the conventionally attractive who find love or have sex.
Then what's your problem? By your own admission, everybody's getting sex. So, by your view of things, everything's hunky-dory.
So by working on ourselves to dispel that idea, we can make the world a more welcoming and loving place for everybody, no matter how they look. This video is a
And the insanity on display in this entire video suddenly started to make a whole lot of sense.
Be sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos about various feminist topics. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
And we're going to cut that a little short because my heterosexuality can only take so much of that crappy gay-ass EDM music that these social justice warriors usually feature at the end of their videos. I'm going to sum this up by saying the following. I have nothing but compassion for people who are disabled, who are overweight, who are of a poor economic situation, and any of the other things that may fall under the categories under discussion in this video. Even people who have quirky, quote-unquote, sexual preferences. One thing that I do not have compassion nor respect for are people that encourage self-destructive behavior, which is what's on display here. Getting past just the political nature of it and getting to the interpersonal or individual impact that crap like this can have on confused kids or teenagers, let me put it to you this way. There is a reason why queer people tend to die at least 20 years earlier than those who are of a hetero persuasion. And it has nothing to do with bullying, with social isolation, or any of that other crap. There is a whole subculture that accommodates the need for attention that people like Riley and some people out there who maybe aren't as kooky as him. So that's not what's at issue. What is at issue is that there are real ramifications for the kind of behaviors that these people engage in. And I am not going to keep my mouth closed and pretend like that's not part of the discussion, because it clearly is. Think I'm a bigot if you like. I don't give a shit. With prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, good evening.